Good morning, moms in real estate. I am so happy to be here right now because we have a special guest, you guys, and we've been partnered with Calibri Real Estate at Moms in Real Estate for, I feel like it's been a year and a half, maybe even longer. And I love this partnership because I personally passed my real estate exam the first time, and I swear it's because of CompuCram, and they're associated with CompuCram, and they're associated with so many great things. And so I'm excited for them to teach. Today we have Mara here who is going to teach us License Like a Mother, and this class is specifically for the moms out there who are looking to get their real estate license and pass their test. So Mara, why don't you take it away?
Well, hello there, everybody. Again, thank you for the introduction. My name is Mara. I've been working in real estate now for 20 years. I'm a licensed broker in California, Michigan, and several other states. I teach pre-licensing for many states. I'm a national tutor as well. And I have a pretty good idea of what is required to pass your state exam, no matter what state you happen to be in. So in the chat here, I was just wondering if you guys could answer for me if any of you actually have your exam coming up. And if so, what state are you getting that license in?
So we might have stuff come in live. It might not be right as you're talking. So I don't know if we'll get those right away.
Oh, okay. So in that case, we'll just keep it fully national, and maybe we can get some more information when we have our Q&A at the end. So as you can see here, this is a national portion crammer in that we are going to go through some key competencies that you are going to need for your ability to pass your state exam. It's important for you to note that every state is different in that there could be one test, there could be two tests, there could be one test that is national information and state-specific information. There could be two tests where you take an exam based on national information, and then a second test where it is just state information. So it's important for you to do your research to understand what specifically in your state is important for you to note and memorize in order to pass that portion, because no matter what, where you are in this country, you're going to have some very specific state information that you are going to need to go through. So these slides that were created are Q&As for people to answer in the chat and go through core topics and then see where we are lacking and help out. Is there any students to participate? Let's say if we put a question up like this on the screen.
So it's live in the Facebook group. And so if any questions come through on there, I'll be able to talk to you about it. And then, but what I would do is just generally, because this is going to go out to all of our moms in real estate community. So specifically if somebody is on there that is about to get licensed, that's who's going to be watching this. And it might be a replay for them.
Okay, got it. So the way that we've set this up with Mackenzie is for these questions to have answers in the chat, and then we go through what the right answer is. But it looks like maybe there won't be participation on your end. So I guess I could just go through the questions and answers and give some explanations. But these are very typical questions that you would see on your national component, no matter where you are in the country.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay, great. So, ladies, if I were you, whenever we go through a question here, I'll give a second for you to read through if you're watching this recording, if you're not here live. Ask yourself what the question is. And if you happen to get it wrong, it's important that you discover why that is and explore maybe a key term or a concept, simply because the likelihood of seeing something related to whatever question I put up on the screen, the likelihood of you seeing a question on it is super high. So if I were you, whenever we go through a question here and you're like, oh, I would not have answered that, you should take a screenshot and go back through your learning materials, wherever it is that you are learning and studying, and work on that particular topic. If you happen to get a question right, or you're like, oh, yes, I would have answered that correctly, then, that's fine. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. My advice to you for studying and passing your state exam is to only spend time on the terms and concepts that you don't understand. Many people make tons of flashcards on some terms that they already know, but you need to really triage the information, because no matter what state you're in, there are so many terms and so many concepts to know that you really, especially if you're running around and being a mom and doing all the things, maybe you even have another job, you need to triage and you need to study the things that are a problem for you. So as an example, let's take a look at this question here. Tests to distinguish a fixture from personal property include all of the following except. No matter where you are learning, some of the first things that you learn is the difference between personal property and real property, and how a piece of personal property can become a fixture. And now as we go through this question here and you're thinking, oh, I don't even remember the key term fixture, I don't remember the steps to take to discover what's going on with that. Again, you need to get into your book and make some flashcards. Something that is really helpful is the term Maria. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm looking at this list, maybe you're even thinking, what is even an annexer? Well, let's talk about it. So Maria in red, you can see, is a key term that you can help to remember the 5 legal tests to determine if something is indeed a fixture, or is it still PP, personal property, not RP, real property. So when we sell properties from buyer to seller, it's extremely important to know what stays at the property and what is something that a seller could take with them. So to discover this, this legal test is mostly used by judges when buyers and sellers have issues after the fact, after the sale, and a buyer's like, this was supposed to stay, but it left. Should it have stayed? Well, a judge can simply use this legal test, but so can you when you're working in real estate. So an improvement on a piece of property is something like a structure, right? A house, a garage, a pole barn, a fence, and those things need to stay at the property. Improvements are things put on a piece of property by a human. The land is being improved. I'm harping on this because the key term improvement is very important for any state exam. So the big old structure that you see on a piece of property is the improvement, right? But then there are things attached to the improvements that become one with it and need to stay. Those are fixtures. So a faucet is a fixture, a light fixture, a chandelier, a ceiling fan is a fixture. So many times you can look at an item and it's obvious that this should stay or this should go, right? But sometimes you're in conflict with yourself. You can always ask your broker. However, you can use Maria. Although it's a legal test, you can still use this yourself. Method of attachment, adaptation, relationship with the parties, etc., is a way for you to walk yourself through. Think about the object, take a look at it, and then decide if it is real property, meaning a fixture, or if it is able to be taken with the seller. If I were you, I would make a flashcard for Maria. I would know what each of the letters stands for and have a basic understanding of what each of these items mean. So, what was the answer here? Remember, it's important to note the phrases that we see. As you can see here, it says the word except. If you move quickly through any state exam, you might say to yourself, oh, what's the tested? Oh, Maria. And then you might say method of attachment. It's important to see what it is they're asking. Are they saying is something true? Is something false? All but, or except, or things like that, or something you have to pay attention to. Big Pro tip here, and that we're seeing it right now, is that you have to move slowly through your exam. Every state gives you plenty of time, and the faster you move, the more little errors you'll make that you wouldn't if you had just slowed down there. So the cost of the item is not in Maria, okay? M, method of attachment. I, intent and adaptability, meaning is it custom made? 1, 3, and 4 are part of Maria, as an example. Exaggeration about a property's positive characteristics would be considered what? It's important that you understand a couple of the key terms that you see here up on your screen. Fraud, that term is always, always going to be on the state exam. Misrepresentation as well. There are different kinds of misrepresentation. There is innocent misrepresentation, fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation. Again, I'm telling you, all of these are very important to know and have like a distinction between. So if you're writing this down, misrepresentation has different kinds: negligent misrepresentation, fraudulent misrepresentation, and innocent misrepresentation. I think we all can understand that 1 and 2 sound very serious. That's not exaggerating anything. You're a lying liar. That's what you are. So you need to, avoid those in this question. Overstating something is not really something that you probably notice as a term that you've learned in any of your information, right, as you were studying, because that's not really a key term, but puffing is. When it comes to puffing, and let me go ahead and switch a slide over, we need to remember, what the word means and have it trigger you to pick it on a state exam. So I always imagine a used car salesman standing outside, smoking a cigarette, puffing on a cigarette on their break. Because puffing is really the used car salesman that lives in all of our hearts. And any of us could fall into that trap. If you watch HGTV or you watch any, show where an agent's walking around, you'll hear a lot of puffing, but actually your mentor or whoever you shadow and trains you for showing should help you avoid that type of behavior when you're working. Saying something like, as you walk into a property, this is the best deal on the block. If you don't buy this house, you're going to miss out on this opportunity. This is the only property like this. If you buy this property within 3 years, it's going to double in value. A lot of people that work in real estate want to project all these ideas of what's going to happen in the future. But honestly, we don't know what's going to happen. There could be a zombie apocalypse. Who knows? We can't say for sure that anybody's value on anybody's property, no matter how hot the market is, that a property is going to double or triple in value or anything like that. So we have to be very careful about the things that we say. Puffing is not giving facts, okay? So again, exaggeration, although legal, puffing is legal. That's an important part of the definition of puffing. Although puffing is legal, it really should be avoided at all costs. And as you begin to work, you need to, even if you got to put a rubber band on your wrist, ladies, it's easy for us to say a bunch of things as we're walking around, but are you stating a fact? Is it 3 bedrooms? Fact. What year was it built? Fact. When did they remodel the kitchen? 2021? Fact. Saying something like, this is a really good investment. It's going to double in value. You sure about that? You sure about that? You willing to really bet on that? So we got to be careful. That would be puffing. Let's go ahead and move on to a different question here. 2 top agents have been competing for listings in the same farm area. So if you don't know what farm area means, it just means a geographical location where 2 agents are basically trying to get the listings. They're competing with each other. They're trying to, have their name all over the place in a certain neighborhood or part of a city or something. But the 2 agents have frequently been cutting their commissions. So they decide, maybe they get together at lunch or something, and they say, listen, let's agree to charge the exact same fees here. And so in doing that, we won't be hurt economically. We have to remember for the state exam that commissions are negotiable by law. There is no set rate. There is no going rate. You might go on your MLS system and you might see that some commissions, they look similar, but it's like Fight Club in that you can't talk about Fight Club, okay? We have to allow our clients the ability to negotiate with us what they would like to pay us. It's a consensual relationship, so you don't have to work with somebody if they want to charge or pay you less than what you think your time is worth. But to get together two agents or maybe a couple brokers in an area and simply say, let's all charge 3%, let's all charge 2.5%, that goes against antitrust. There are many different antitrust federal laws out there, okay? But the one that kind of started it all way back, in the 1800s was the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, you saw on the screen there, though, didn't you, that there were a couple of other federal laws that really get people on these exams. Let's go back. Truth in Lending Act, TILA. You're like, ooh, that sounds familiar. RESPA, number 4, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. So, I want to give you some advice. Let's be clear. The answer is Sherman Antitrust Act. Whenever anything price fixing comes up, it's antitrust. Whenever consumers' ability to have a choice of the agents that they want to work with and their ability to negotiate commission comes up, that's all about antitrust. And so any indicator of that at a question, immediately you should think, oh, Sherman Antitrust. However, you might get one question, maybe on your state exam, regarding something like the Sherman Antitrust Act. But since it's coming up here, the TILA on number 2 and 4, RESPA, just in case we don't have enough time to get into a question about that today, you have to understand the basics of those two federal laws. You have to understand their purpose, what is allowed under those acts and what's not allowed, or you're going to get a lot of questions wrong on your state exam, okay? Again, remember, these are federal laws. This is a national little crammer we're doing, so no matter where you are, these are important for you to note, okay? So maybe we'll see them, maybe we won't, but loosely, let me go back here. Let's talk about the first 2 bullet points, just very loosely, in the way that, I keep them straight. TILA was implemented by Regulation Z. And one thing about a state exam is they're going to ask you about Regulation Z. The way to remember that Z is what sort of created TILA is a silly phrase that maybe you've learned while you were, you've been studying. Maybe you have another instructor. I'm not quite sure. But the phrase is TILA, Godzilla with a Z. You need to link Z with TILA, and you will get a point on your state exam. It's always going to come up. But outside of that, I want you to think about what it says. Slow down. Truth in Lending Act. A federal law that told all the banks out there and lenders to be truthful to those that are shopping around for a loan. Truth in lending. Truth in getting a loan. So, banks have to advertise the truth of the matter. What loan are you getting at what rate, along with many other key terms of the loan, especially the annual percentage rate, the APR. RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. Let's break that down. Settlement is just another name for the closing, the consummation of the loan. The day of closing, the day that the buyer gets the loan. The Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act protects you when you are about to get your loan. TILA helps you when you shop around. TILA makes banks say, hey, Mara, before you get this loan, it's got this and this and this and this and this going on. So I can be an informed consumer. All right, great. Right before closing, RESPA protects me because right before the settlement, real estate settlement procedures, the closing, I get a detailed list of information about the cost for me to get that loan. So a couple of days before closing, I get to understand all the costs of getting the loan, all the points, all of the, the fees for the loan just to become, active. And then I am a consumer who was able to shop around for a loan because of TILA and understand things. And then right before closing, warned again about costs. I am an informed consumer. These two laws were created to protect me and you from the big scary banks. Now, I've gone off on a tangent about this because it's so important. These two things will be on your state exam. You must make flashcards if you feel like you are foggy on any of that stuff. You really can't be, okay? All right. Now, let's go ahead and continue on here. The IRS issues rules that determine when a real estate agent is an employee and when they are an independent contractor, but which of the following statements on that topic is false? Again, we're going slow on our test. We're seeing the word false and we're not fooling ourselves that, that they're asking something that they're not. Okay, so we want to find something 1 through 4 that is not true. The brokerage may allow an independent contractor to place their own ads, but the ads must conform with the firm's advertising rules. Yes, the Department of Real Estate in your state is going to have something to say about all of your advertising as well as your broker. It's important that your ads don't have false information, discriminatory information in them or phrases. And then, of course, we need to make sure that your ads, they have the correct information that shows that you are not the broker, but that you work under a broker. Okay. So 1 is absolutely true. The brokerage may require an independent contractor to have a cell phone. Well, it's 2025, so are you okay if you don't have a cell phone anyways? But if you're not really an employee, how could a broker tell you what to wear, what types of technology you have, what car you drive? They really can't, okay? So I feel like maybe 2 is the vibe. What do you think? Maybe. 3, the brokerage will take taxes from an employee's paycheck. Well, if you're an employee, sure, they will take money from your paycheck. Be very careful. What does it say there? It says the word what? Employee. They're talking about the receptionist. They're talking about the office manager. Ooh, 3 is tricky. It might make you be like, no, they don't take anything out of the taxes. Like, no, that's not how it works. Exactly. But what does the word say in there? Employee. They're trying to get you. Careful. The brokerage will tell an employee to work certain hours. Sure. A receptionist, an office manager is going to have hours and times that they have to work, obviously, right? So look how tricky that is. We made it tricky on purpose because your state exam will also be trying to get you like that. So let's move on here. Real estate licensees may be employees of their broker or independent contractors. Well, sure. I mean, it's possible, but you're really going to be independent. The IRS actually really likes to call you a statutory non-employee because your broker supervises you, so it feels employee, kind of. But for any entity that matters like the IRS, you are independent. So this means that you will be getting a 1099. You will have to keep track of your, receipts and things like that so you can, do all of your write-offs, but you certainly will be independent. Now, again, remember, some of these questions on your state exam are going to be yapping about employee stuff. They're talking about, one more time, if ever you see that, they're talking about a receptionist. They're talking about maybe an assistant, office manager, but you will definitely be independent. So again, we pointed out probably the vibe that was false is 2, and we were absolutely right. the brokerage may require an independent contractor to have a cell phone. No. But again, if you don't have one, are you okay? All right, next question. A buyer asks their buyer's agent to write an offer on terms that don't match the listing agreement. The buyer's agent refuses to write the offer, and then in writing, unilaterally, that means one-sided, the agent says, "I'm done with you, buyer," and terminates the agency relationship. So what is true here? Now, this seems a little hasty, a little wild, and it does, because you're right, it's a little wild. You don't have to keep working with somebody. You can step away from the relationship with any client that you have. But if you don't have good reason, there could be some problems that arise because of that. Same with any client that you're in an agency relationship with. They could fire you, but if it's for good cause, like you're not a good communicator, you haven't done open houses when you say you would, you don't get back to them, you're flaky, fine. But if they don't have a good reason, there's some possible consequences there as well for you with your broker and other things, right? So you can unilaterally get rid of a buyer, but let's think about what the question is saying at the beginning. A buyer is saying to you, their buyer agent, always put yourself in the question. They're saying to you, this seller has a property listed for $600,000. So the listing agreement, let's say the property is listed for $600,000. Okay. I want you to write an offer for me, buyer agent, for $550,000. That's normal. That's actually fine. The buyer is saying, I don't want to give the seller exactly what it is that they want. What in the heck does the buyer care about this, what the seller has in their listing agreement? It has nothing to do with the buyer. The buyer is simply saying, here's what I want to put in my offer. And although you can advise them in things, just write the offer, right? So you can unilaterally terminate this relationship. Oopsie poopsie. But why would you? Why would you? If you're thinking, yeah, why would I? Exactly. But technically speaking, could you? Sure. But in the end, your buyer could have some bad reviews about you. They could maybe think that you are, not wanting to work with them for some reason that is not so great, maybe a discriminatory reason or whatever. Because frankly, why would you unilaterally terminate your relationship with a buyer who just wants you to write something, not caring what the seller wants? So, although you can unilaterally terminate the agency relationship, there could be something that happens with this. Maybe a talking to from your broker. Okay. Now, I like this next question. A listing agent. Okay. So you are listing a property. Again, it's helpful if you're just like, okay, I'm the agent in this situation. Because some of the questions, if you have to guess, you're smart. You have common sense. And so if you can just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you might be able to guess the right answer, right? At a minimum. Let's see if we know this one. A listing agent knows of a defect in the listed property. When the listing agent becomes ill, another agent in the same company takes over the listing. The second agent, what? Legally, the second agent has the exact same responsibility. You still owe all the same fiduciary duties. You still have your responsibility to note defects in the property and make sure that the buyer is aware of all material facts, whether the seller likes it or not. So like you, second agent that takes over. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, I mean, in that case, isn't the answer by law, you have the same responsibility regarding the defect? You're absolutely right. Think about this. If you got sick and some guy named Bob in your office took over your listing, he's going to have access to your paperwork. That means he's going to see the seller's disclosure. He's going to know anything that you've noted as a material fact that's, defective, malfunctioning, whatever at the property. But even if Bob in your office has no idea what you thought of the property, still, just like you had to discover what was going on with this property when you got the listing, so does he. So he is held accountable in the exact same way that the original agent is held accountable. Now, life estate. We learn so many things about the different ways that you can, have an estate in property, have a relationship to property, or absolute estate, the feasible fee estate. And it can feel sort of overwhelming when you're learning those things. But I want you to know that's not really part of the job. We can't give advice about any of these topics. Really, our clients would have to go to an attorney to deal with anything related to these. So try and relax a little bit. Learn some brief differences about the 3 different kinds of estates you can have. Again, life estate, fee simple absolute estate, and defeasible fee estate. If you have some basic differences down, you're going to be in really good shape, okay? Because then you're going to be dangerous enough to get a couple of points on the exam. But I don't want you to overwhelm yourself thinking that there's going to be tons of questions on your state exam about those topics, because that would not be true, okay? Because the Department of Real Estate understands that it's not really part of the job for you to give a ton of advice on this or any advice at all. So let's take a look at this life estate. A life estate will last until what? Well, if you're thinking, I know that's about somebody owns something until they die. Right away, your eyes are moving towards 2 and 3. And you would be right. Okay. 1 and 4, that has nothing to do with a life estate. So we're really toggling between 2 and 3, aren't we? Anything that ends in an OR, take a look at number 2, grantor, is the giver of something. Anybody that ends in an EE, grantee, is the receiver of something. So one is the giver and one is the receiver. The person that is the grantor, the giver of the life estate, the one that gives ownership to somebody else, why would that be the answer? They've already given it to the grantee. They've given it to the life tenant. So the recipient, the grantee, the receiver is the one that has the life estate and owns it until when? Until a death. Maybe of them, maybe of an other named person called the remainder man. But nonetheless, it's all about who received that life estate and has that type of ownership. Somebody in their situation dying. So the best answer in that case is what? 3. The death of the recipient. The OREE rule in real estate is going to save your butt when you're taking these state exams, okay? So one more time. Anybody that ends in an OR, okay, and that could be lessor, okay, that could be grantor, among many others. And anybody who receives something, grantee, lessee, you can always know that they receive. Sometimes the questions you can just simply answer because you know who is giving and then who is receiving. So if you can keep that straight, that's going to help you in the event that you're like, oh, I don't know. At least you know what the question is talking about. Who is giving something and who is receiving something, okay? That is important stuff. Which of the following is the best definition of a material fact? So you all know, there's no doubt that material fact is something that's going to be on your state exam because it just comes up endlessly in any, chapters you are in, no matter how you're learning, what school you're with, you're definitely seeing this term all over the place. It has a lot to do with the job. The way that I think about a material fact is it's a fact that if the buyer knew, they would make a different decision, maybe. Maybe they wouldn't make an offer. Maybe they wouldn't buy the property. Maybe they would make a lesser offer. If we keep material facts from a buyer, they're kind of buying something that they don't understand everything about, which is not right, right? So a material fact is, a key term that is critical to understand. So based on what I said, we can see here that the best answer would be 4. Knowledge that would affect a buyer's decision. We have to remember that we have to protect the buyer at all costs. The buyer is the little guy and the seller is the big guy. The seller is supposed to be as honest as possible about the defects about a property and basically say, here's the property and here's everything that I know that's wrong with it. It's very much like dating. That's how I think about it. When you put yourself out there on Bumble, ladies, or whatever, if you've been out there, or you have a friend that is, you can Photoshop your little pictures and stuff like that. But I mean, what's your big plan? People are going to find out. It's just like that. Sellers should put all their cards on the table. Here's my property, take it or leave it. And just the same way that somebody would want to date you, no matter your flaws, some buyer at the right price is going to want to buy a seller's property. But there are sellers that want to hide material facts simply because they're like, oh, well, they won't like me or they won't like the property, So sometimes you're put in a position as an agent where a seller's like, the roof has had some leaks in the spring, like a couple of times, like we fixed it. We don't think it will leak again this spring. Do we have to tell the buyer? Can we just not tell the buyer? No, you have to tell the buyer. Remember, a fiduciary duty that you owe to your seller is loyalty, unless they ask you to do something that's illegal. And hiding material facts is illegal. Okay. So we must always make sure that the buyer has as much information about the property as possible. Any question related to that, you can always be pretty dang sure that the best answer would be to be honest to the buyer. Practically no question would lead you down a path to keep anything from the buyer, truly. Okay. In terms of like the material, physical structure of a property or issues that are known. Okay. Now, I'm taking a look at some other questions here. I feel like potentially some of these are unlikely to be seen, so I'm going to take a look here. Okay, so that one would be a good one to get to here. So I'm just going to skip through to some questions that, there we go. A primary advantage of owning a property in severalty is what? Well, first and foremost, what does severalty mean? You have to know what severalty means. You can be given a piece of property. Here's a defeasible fee estate. Here's a fee simple absolute estate. Here is a life estate. And when you are at closing, you're getting the property, they ask you, okay, somebody's giving you a fee simple absolute estate. How do you want to hold it? How do you want to vest it like a vest? How do you want to hold? How do you want to vest? That is when you can choose severalty. You can choose tenancy by the entirety or community property if people are married. You can choose tenants in common, joint tenancy. Okay. So when you take ownership, you make a choice of how you want to take it. You are given, now listen, you are given fee simple absolute. You are given divisible fee. You are given life estate. But you must choose how you want to hold it. How do you want to hold it? Severalty is just one of the ways that you can hold it. Severalty means severed from all other people. You are alone. You are by yourself owning something. So if you're a single person or even just a corporation, which is a fake human, essentially, you would be owning in severalty. Ladies, that's the only way I've ever owned a property. Okay. So severalty is good. You're owning it all by yourself and you are severed from all others. This term will always be on your state exam. Always. And the way that you can think about it is, again, sever. severed from all others in your own little bubble. You own a property, not with a spouse, not with anybody else, just you. But what gets students every time on exams is it says the word several, which makes you feel like several people own the property. But again, that is not the case with this. So that's like the big oopsie doopsie that students make. Now, think about what I said. If you own a property all by your lonesome, what word, like, how do you feel about that if you're the one that owns the property all by yourself? You probably feel pretty free, flexible even. You could sell it tomorrow. You could live in it for 50 years and, leave it and die and leave it to your kids. You can, there's a million things that you can do. You don't have to go check in with anybody about that too. Super flexible ownership and severalty. Let's go ahead and take a peek here. And I'm looking at our clock. We'll do another question here. A condensed history of the ownership of a property is called what? What is a condensed meaning? A brief document that shows the ownership of a property in order. If you go into the public record system, for most properties, you can go back super far and see all of the different deeds that were recorded. That shows all of the different owners. And you should be able to see who that present owner is as well. Right? So, what is that? It's called the abstract of title. So you had some other things that you could have chosen though, right? There's chain of title, abstract of title. But abstract of title for this particular question is your very best bet. For anybody buys a property, they're going to be able to see tons of information about the property, from any deed that's been recorded that is still available on the public record system, to liens that were on the property and then taken off, easements, any sort of recorded matters that are important for the property are going to be available to view. There is a person that works at a title company, and their job is called title abstractor. And their whole job is to go into the public record systems, because they'll be going into several, and identifying all key information, writing it into a document that's called the abstract of title. Then they walk down the hallway to an attorney that works at the title company, and that's when the attorney gives their opinion of title. The attorney can say something like, there's a golden retriever. They can give their opinion of title. And that's basically going to tell a buyer, there's a cloud on the title, there's not a cloud on the title. And if there happens to be an issue that is discovered in this document, the seller has an opportunity to clear that up before the what? The closing, hopefully, right? Now we have, maybe 11 minutes or so left. Obviously we didn't get into too many questions. If we were to do this again, I think, without live participation in some of the questions, I think I have a better idea of like how we could structure this to give some key points. But does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we actually have lots of questions. So we just asked them to hold them so that you could kind of go through your presentation, but we have several.
Okay, great.
I'm ready. Popping those up. So they're kind of coming in from all different platforms, because we have people on YouTube, Facebook, all the different places.
Okay, great.
So first off, there was just some good encouragement. So again, reiterating, Christina shared that she just filled in Alabama, but she feels like she's going to be more equipped. So thank you for everything that you shared there. And then we had a couple more people saying thank you. But one of the first questions we had was, do you recommend focusing on vocabulary first or jumping right into practice tests?
That is such a good question, and a super common question. So I feel like when you can get the terms down, the key terms, that makes you dangerous enough if you need to guess on things, right? But when students focus only on, especially in the beginning, key terms, they miss out on the core concepts. There's deeper things going on within the terms. And sometimes the definitions of the terms won't even make sense unless you understand the full concept. So It's hard to say. I don't think there's anything wrong with like going into key terms and learning definitions, but you need a deeper understanding to be able to answer multiple choice questions. It's many of the questions on all the state exams are not just going to be like personal property is what, and it's like ABC, and you just like pick the right definition. They're going to be deeper and more detailed. So I don't think there's anything wrong with terms, but I think going chapter by chapter or topic by topic is most important. Now, if I could go back to the Alabama gal or any of you in any state, you need to go to the Department of Real Estate, or some of you are in a Bureau of Real Estate, go to their main page, go into the tab on their site that's for examinees, people taking exams, and they will actually, every state has a printout of how their state exam is compiled, how many questions, the topics, and how they are weighted. You'll actually be able to see what topic is most important, meaning what topic you'll get the most questions in. So if you're like, where do I start? We got to get that document, right, on that site. And then you can start by saying, okay, it looks like my state is going to have a lot of questions on the topic of agency. Let me get those terms on flashcards. Let me go through the core concepts of agency, then move to the next heavily weighted topic, and so on and so forth. Next question.
Okay, perfect. I actually think, okay, I'm going to jump to one that just came in just because I think it's in alignment with what you were just saying.
Sure.
So if I only have time to study one tool a day, what should it be? I kind of feel like that's what you were just saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would start there for sure.
Okay.
And again, like if it's tough, I have a lot more to say if I knew the specific states, but again, this is very general. But yes, go to the Department of Real Estate's website. If you can't find it, call their main number. Anybody that works at these departments are really nice. Ask them, where is the document that breaks down the state exam into topics and how they are weighted? They will provide it to you.
So good. So if you're still watching, let us know what state you're from. But in the meantime, we will jump to the next question, which is, which states have reciprocity? I never say that word right, but
reciprocity. I know.
Reciprocity. And what does this actually mean?
Yeah. So as somebody who has a broker's license in many states, states supposedly have reciprocity, in which if you have a license in one state, you can just get it in another, but that's just false. You still have to take all of the classes and do all of the testing for every single state. You might be able to minimize, maybe like as an example, in California, you have to take 3 classes and pass this and that. Maybe they'll reduce it a little bit for you by like an hour or two of what's like required. But reciprocity is basically, it's not quite true for any state, to be totally honest. You might be able to like get your license a tiny bit faster, but just know, no matter what state you go to, you should be able to, go into the Department of Real Estate's website on that state and say reciprocity. You always have a tab for you to search, and that state will say, okay, if you have a license in Ohio or Virginia or whatever, we'll lower the requirements of education by a couple of hours. But a lot of states just simply say no reciprocity. But hopefully that helps.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I think it's one of those things where it's a bummer where it's like, what? I can't just get my license. But at the same token, what I know as somebody that's been doing this for so many years is, even though it's sometimes a little bit more time consuming, we never regret actually developing the skill and the knowledge. 100%. And so by having to go through the little longer process, the nice thing is when you do go into that other state, you'll be much better equipped to actually serve people in that state.
Couldn't agree more. And again, to your point, there are state specific things that you have to learn, meaning no matter what, you'll always have classes to take and a test. There's no escaping that in any state. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the next one is, how should I read my exam report to know what to focus on? So maybe they mean if like they have not passed. Yeah.
So when you fail, a lot of states do provide you with the topics and how you did percentage wise on those topics. And you should start with the topics that you did poorly on. But it's hard to kind of tell, because it's like, oh, with agency, you got like a 50%. Okay, well, what does that really mean? This is why, again, to understand that breakdown, we must get the original document of how your state weights the topics. Just because you did low in a topic doesn't mean that it's important, super important. You have to see the most heavily weighted topics and then see which ones you did bad on in terms of the heavily weighted ones, then work on those in order.
Yeah, I think to your point earlier, where they're trying to trick you, one of the agents that I respect the absolute most, they took their test over 25 times. And I think looking back, I just remember I just admire that first off, like when you have that level of tenacity and you just keep your head in the game. I always say, like, don't let that shame you. Like that speaks a lot about who you are. But I think just right now an aha I had is that the agent would focus on the question, right? Like, what questions did I get wrong? And to your point, not only are they always kind of trying to trick you for the, there's multiple right answers, but they want, the best, but also, yeah, you don't always get the same question. So if you're focusing on questions and then you don't get that question, you didn't actually improve in that category. So I love what you're saying, because in hindsight, like, I wish I could, obviously she's been licensed for years now, but going forward, like, just saying, focus in on this subject and this topic and this area is going to be so different. That way, regardless of if you get the exact question or not, the area to strengthen, right? And I think that's kind of
absolutely. And those printouts are only going to give you categories, not questions, right? And I love what you said there. If anybody, and it sounds like there's a couple of you that have not passed, that's okay. That's not the norm. Is most people have to take it a couple of times. If you pass your first time, that's a great accomplishment and you should be very proud of yourself. However, you cannot stop just because you didn't pass your exam. There's test anxiety. You might have something going on like dyslexia, who knows? There's so many components and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And again, I know somebody, it's funny you said, I know somebody who took the test 17 times and does so well in real estate that I pick their brain constantly and have for years. So
exactly.
You cannot quit. You've done a lot of education and studying. That printout for why you failed is an opportunity to go back and look at those topics and then get back in there.
Yeah, I love it. And again, don't quit. And, Calibri is one of our partners that you can go back not only for your pre-licensing, but for your continuing ed. And there's just so many different tools that they have. So we're going to do one more question, but then also if you want to reach out, what is the best way for them to, they of course can go and sign up right via, our website. We have a link on heymeyer.com. You can sign up, but if somebody wanted to reach out more directly, is there a way that they could do that?
Yes. So I'm writing it into the chat. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, great. Mara.madge@calibrigroup.com. So happy to help you guys. Even if you just have your printout of you failed and you're trying to understand where you should focus, that takes me no time at all to take a look at that. I do national tutoring for so many states. So I've got you ladies. Email it to me. I'll reply and I'll tell you, focus on this, focus on that. If you have trouble finding the document through your Department of Real Estate's website of what is most important and how topics are weighted, happy to help you as well. I have many of those states documents already saved. So if you need anything, you let me know. I do private tutoring as well through Calibri. So if you want to spend some time, not just going through why you failed, but you really want to dive into some of those topics and stuff, happy to help you with that as well.
Oh, I love that. Calibri just continues to be such a great source for us. And so we will wrap with the final question. So wait, that was not it. Hold on. We had another one. I already did that one. So this one was, what's the difference between the national portion of the exam and the state is what they're asking.
So there are some laws that, or concepts or rules that are nationwide. And anything that is the same in all states would be national information and questions that any licensee should be able to answer. And then state specific, every single state has different laws, rules, regulations that the Department of Real Estate guides you and your broker through. So it's very specific to just your state. As an example, in California, you have to do Con Ed within a 4-year period, 45 hours. You have to renew every 4 years, blah, blah, blah. And every other state's different. I can name a million things that are different in each state, but that's just an example. So anything particular to your state is state material.
Got it. Got it. This was so helpful, Mara. I'm so sorry that I missed the beginning. We normally start at 10:30, and I know with you guys we were already set to go at 10. So I'm sure I missed a lot. And on that note, if you're tuning in on any of our platforms and you missed it, keep in mind that you can go back. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us in our community. And if you're not in our weekly emails, you want to go ahead and get on those because we send this information out. And in this weekly email, we will include Mara's information. We'll include a link to all Colibre's pre-licensing and post-licensing courses. And we just are so thankful, Mara, to have you guys as a partner. We hear all the time. We even have like guys that are outside of Moms in Real Estate that are like, we jumped on the Moms in Real Estate page to like sign up and do the link. So you are such a resource for so many people. So thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you. Glad
to hear it. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. All right. We will be in touch and we'll see you guys next week for another masterclass. Talk to you then.
Bye, girls.
Bye, guys.